It's good to enrich your life, but best to avoid foods that need to be enriched.
Is by far the most controllable thing with regards to one's health. There's no debate. In eating the right
Sure.
food, making the right choices. We've had, several episodes that specifically target some of the surprising things about, the fake food, the mislabeling, the misinformation that's out there. Even when people are trying to eat right, a lot of times it's hard.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. A few days ago I was in the supermarket and I kind of called you and I was like, "Joe, I need your help." I was like,
Right.
"What does all this enriched mean?" It's like I know that every unhealthy food with wheat is usually enriched flour, but I'm in the rice aisle. What the F is enriched rice? Can you explain that to me, please?
Yeah, so that's right. I mean, I remember you going, "What in the world?" Yeah, so maybe we could give some examples.
And just a background for people who don't understand what enriched food means and why it's there in the first place.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Let's look at a few things and then just notice how prevalent this enriched moniker is. Let me pull up an image we've used in a past episode, one of my favorite, the deluxe cheeseburger with 6,000 ingredients, right? And we discussed this back, I think it was episode 11 or one of the past episodes. But even in this, which has like, I mean, this is like a hazardous material incident because it's got so many chemicals, so many things. But even in this, you'll notice the stuff that's framed in red shows enriched, which and then it says what enriches is wheat flour, niacin, reduced iron, thiamine, nitrate, riboflavin, folic acid. And then further down again, wheat flour, and again it has the niacin, the reduced iron, the thiamine mononitrate, and riboflavin, and it also has folic acid. So
Yeah, so
these
I
are the
wanted to
things.
ask you what niacin and what
They're vitamins or
thiamine
B
is.
vitamins. So these are
Uh-huh.
vitamins. So when you see anything that's enriched, they're adding in typically vitamins, often B vitamins. You're going to see very commonly, you're going to see iron very commonly. These are
Mhm.
things that are added back
Although
into the food.
reduced iron, if iron is healthy, why would they and they're adding it in, why would
It's
they
just
add in
it's
reduced
just a
iron?
different form of it. So it's not that isn't the problem. The problem is why are they adding vitamins, minerals into your food? Why are they adding that in? And the
Because
answer
they
is so
bleach the food?
obvious. Sorry?
They bleach the food until there's nothing left?
So they process. The food gets, the more processed it is, the more those things are stripped away from what was natural. So back in the early days of civilization, and when they started eventually making any sort of flour, there was nothing enriching for the flour. They made flour and you ate the flour and it still had some nutrients in it. Now the ultra processed foods we eat are so devoid of nutrition that they have to, even in a chemical disaster like this thing, they have to add in nutrients so that it has some nutritional value. Now think about that for a minute. So if your food has no nutritional value or next to none, had it not been adding vitamins and minerals, why are you even eating it? Might as well just take some supplements and eat something else. When you eat a steak, let's say a steak with butter, do you put vitamins on that steak with butter? Do you have to sprinkle some iron on there? No, why not? Because it has a true dense nutritional content. Things that are nutritionally dense don't need all this monkey business being done to them so that they can restore some of the nutrients you would expect to see in these products. So anytime you see something is enriched, you have to ask yourself, well, why do they have to enrich it? And you mentioned when you're at the grocery store, let me pull up a couple of things that like you said, you're mentioning about rice, for example, and other things, right? So let me here's some rice. This is a long grain rice. And in red, we have
Yeah,
all
the same.
the enrichment, right? Iron again, niacin, thiamine, folate. And if you look at the bottom where it says ingredients, that's where you see the word enriched long grain rice. And then it says what is it? It's rice with all the stuff that has a red box around it. Because the rice without all that stuff would be so nutritionally poor that you
The
probably might as
processed
well
rice,
sorry?
not the regular rice. The processed rice
Well,
without.
all most rice that you're going to get. This is a national brand. This is a common brand. high quality, most people would think.
So
And
is it better to buy enriched or
that
non-enriched
better
rice?
to go to Europe and buy the rice there, which probably won't
Asia.
have all of this. It'll just be more nutrient dense. If you're even going to eat rice. Remember, rice isn't like a health food. It's a food that was given to the impoverished so they could sustain the population. That's why you don't see cave drawings of people eating rice or lettuce or a broccoli either. You see people, with spears and things chasing after animals. That's what's nutrient dense. That's what all the longest lived civilizations were always eating meat.
But I
So,
mean, rice is a staple food for billions of people around the world, and it
be,
has been for
be,
thousands of years.
right,
And many
but think
times it's all
about it,
they ate.
because that's all they had. If you think about it, the emperors, the kings, what did you ever see them eating? Bowls of rice?
They were
No.
eating steaks.
They're eating the meat, they're eating the turkey, they're eating. So it's a way to feed. It's just like corn here in the US. Top crop corn. Corn historically has been, it's a crop for, potatoes in Ireland, for example. It's a way to feed a population, but it isn't nutrient dense. So when you have things like rice that's processed the way we handle rice today, in order to give it some nutritional value, it says rice and the nutrients that are added into it because it doesn't have any more because of how we process it. Again, that just begs the question. Anytime you see something that says enriched, you should ask yourself, should I really be eating this? Because had it not been for the fact that they sprinkled some stuff on it, which again, you could take as supplements, why should I be eating this? Maybe I should be eating something that's
So
more
two
nutrient
questions.
dense.
One, vitamins are healthy, so I mean, and they're expensive. So if I'm getting these vitamins for free, basically by buying the cheaper food with enriched product, why shouldn't I go ahead and do that? And then the second question is, how do you enrich rice? Like flour is one thing because it's all ground up. It's easy to sprinkle in some vitamins. Rice, it grows in the field. They take the rice. It is the rice, right? Is it like a powder on top on the outside of the rice?
Yeah, it's
How
added to it.
exactly do they do this? And is it better than just natural rice that's non-enriched?
Well, again, the problem is that not the non-enriched rice you'd find in the US for the most part, you wouldn't want to eat it anyways. You might as well eat cardboard. It has about the same nutritional value. I mean, it's going to fill you up. So if you were starving, it would be better to eat that than nothing. But it's not the go-to food if you're really trying to be an athlete, for example, or be healthy. It's something you can eat, but it shouldn't be your primary food. And the answer is yes, they do add in whatever ingredients. And another thing about our food labels in the US, they don't say on the food labels what they've done to the food, what chemicals they've used to process the food, which may linger in the food. There's no mention of
Yeah.
that. So the question you're asking is a much broader question. What did they do to this food? Because what they did to it explains how they're able to add in nutrients and vitamins, and you don't see a coating on top of it. It's blended
And
in.
what removed that? So if the
Chemical. Well, yeah,
natural
the
vitamins that
processing,
you
yeah, right. And that's the whole thing. And it's so broad. Here's another one. This is pasta. And again, it has wheat,
yeah,
and then all the other stuff
same vitamins.
is the same stuff that they're adding over and over again, which has been basically become non-existent through the processing of the food. So bottom line is, it's
So is
not
it
that
the
you can't.
bleaching process or it is another process that kind of gets
Yeah,
rid
I
of
can't. I don't
the
know the specifics of, and I don't think I would want to know just how much they adulterate these foods as they get them ready for. Like for example, in Europe, for the most part, if you go to a farm, even in the United States, nobody refrigerates eggs. The eggs can stay out in room temperature.
Mhm.
You don't
Yeah.
refrigerate them. Why? Because there's a coating when it comes out of the chicken that protects the egg and keeps, basically air from traversing into the egg. But
Mhm.
in the United States, everything is bleached and processed. The eggs themselves have that coating removed. So now the eggs are more at risk. So you have to, because they're so paranoid about the eggs having salmonella, bacterial growth.
Yeah.
Whereas in Europe, that doesn't exist. The same thing, I might have mentioned in another episode, I was talking to a chef at a restaurant who trained in France as a cordon bleu chef. And when he was there training in France, he saw them putting chicken on a cutting board, cutting the chicken, moving the chicken over and putting vegetables on the same cutting board. That's a huge no-no. like here the way we think. Like you can't. There's going to be cross contamination. And he asked the question to the chef, and the chef, the French chef, chuckled. And he says that isn't a problem here in Europe. It's only in the United States because you have a major problem with bacteria from the housing and processing of your meats. Whereas we don't have that. Our chickens are checked for this. So they don't actually, we're not worried that our chickens have, and our chicken meat is going to have this contamination. So we don't even worry about it. And it just goes to show that how we do things here in the United States isn't always the same way it's done elsewhere. Same thing with this. It's not that you can't eat this. It's that if you see something that's enriched, you probably should look for a different food to be your primary food source that doesn't require exogenous or external nutrients to be added to it to make it a viable food. That's really, I think, the most important sort of message with that. And it reminds me of a story, which it's like a folk story. I'm not sure that you've if you've ever heard of it. And it talks about the legend or what have you of the traveler and stone soup. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, there are tales like that in a variety of cultures, including in the Talmudic cultures. There are stories like that as well, where people who are traveling and they ran out of money and ran out of food will basically have a soup of dirt and stones and stuff like that, because the stones do contain a variety of minerals, and the earth can contain metals, and theoretically, those can give you a tiny bit of nutrition. It won't actually fill you up, but that's the story, is that it magically works to keep the hero alive.
So the story, or one of the first versions of this story that was published was back in 1720. And it was after a French journalist named Madame de Noyer passed away, and she had these various stories that were published after her death. And the stories were called Les Lettres Historiques et Galantes, the historic and gallant letters. And in one of them was this recounting of this folk story, and it had to do with a tramp, as in Lady and the Tramp. But the story's taken on many forms over the years in all different cultures to essentially be a traveler that has no money. And they show up in a town with a pot, an empty pot, and some rocks or stones. And they go to the people in the village as they're arriving. They said, "Hey, how are you?" He says, I'd like to make us some soup." And they're like, "Oh, what kind of soup are you going to make?" "I'm going to make some stone soup." So the town is intrigued. They've never had stone soup before. So they're like, "Oh, that's wonderful." He says, "I'll make enough for everybody." So he gets water and creates a fire and starts boiling water with some stones in the pot. And everybody's like fascinated by this stone soup. They want to know what it's going to taste like and what it's going to be. They've never heard of this. And as the water's starting to boil, the traveler says to the people, he says, "If you'd like, you can contribute to the soup, and you can add some ingredients that'll make it even better." So people are like, "Oh no, we want to do that. We want to share in this." So people start bringing vegetables and meat and this and that. And in the end, this is a depiction from Grok of what the stone soup would look like. Okay, now again, this has been passed through the generations. These stories have been floating around. Here is the stone soup, and if you notice, there's other things in there because the stones have really no value, and it's not. And could some minerals leach from the stones? Maybe, but probably not. So it's
Yeah.
that if you take the stones, but you add everything else, including meat and vegetables, to it, you now have a soup like magic. And it's a tale of bringing together a community and how together you can make something out of nothing, right?
Yeah,
The,
well, feed the poor, especially the traveler gets to eat, even though he had no money to pay for any food. So
he paid for his meal by having ingenuity and being very
a
clever,
good
right?
storyteller, a good
A good
storyteller.
storyteller. And again, he wasn't lying. He did make stone soup because there were stones in there. Ultimately, it reminds me of that because that's what we're doing with these enriched products. The products are enriched because they're like the stone. And then you're adding, maybe they have some nutritional value, a hair better than just the stones, but it's in the same sort of ballpark. And then what you're doing is you're adding in other things. And I always thought that was sort of unfortunate, right? You should look for foods that at least are what you expect them to be. And if they're devoid of nutrition, you probably shouldn't be eating it. You can eat it once in a while. To me, it's like smoking a cigar. You can get away with doing that periodically, but you don't want to be a cigar every hour. And, look, I'll put up another example here. This is not an enriched food, but when you go to it, you don't expect it to be. One of the most popular candy bars in America, Snickers. If you look at the ingredients, it's basically sugar, milk, corn syrup, which is more sugar, then more sugar after that, palm oil, it has seed oils, it has all the bad things you don't want to eat, but it tastes good. So people like it because it tastes good.
I know it has the peanuts. Peanuts are healthy. They're a superfood.
Actually, no, and I haven't eaten ever since I worked in heart surgery. I stopped eating peanuts. They're not even a nut, just so you know. They're not even from the
Yeah,
nut
that's
family.
true.
And very inflammatory. People probably shouldn't eat peanuts. So I stopped. And I love peanuts. You have to understand, I love peanut butter. It was one of my favorite foods. I very rarely eat any peanuts anymore, just not because I don't enjoy the taste, and it's not because they don't have protein, because they do. But
Yeah, it's
overall,
lots of
they're
protein.
not something, it's a new world food. It had never been eaten anywhere in the world till the America was discovered, and then this was brought back to Europe and spread around. It really isn't the food people should probably be eating as widely as they do, and now everybody's developing allergies to everything, but certainly peanuts being probably the number one allergy. So I don't even view peanuts as a go-to food. I avoid it, and only occasionally eat it because I actually do like peanuts, but I avoid peanuts altogether. Macadamia
Mm.
nuts would be a better choice.
Yeah,
And you can
yeah,
make
macadamia are
macadamia
delicious too.
butter and so forth.
They're
But
very expensive.
so we agree this is not a health food, right? You look at it, it's not a health food. You don't
Well,
expect it to be.
sugar, corn syrup, which is poisonous sugar, and then sugar again. So
Yeah, and sugar means basically glucose with more fructose in it. So none
yeah.
of this is like healthy. But again, you're not picking it off the shelf because you think it's healthy. It's because you think you'll enjoy eating it, right? But
Hmm.
even this, see, they're not saying this is enriched, right? They're just saying what it is. You're buying it at face value. But I just want to point out that marketing can change the equation. Just like putting the word enriched, most people say, oh, it's enriched, it's great. No, you have a food that's like the stone that you're having to add stuff to. Maybe you should just pick a different food category altogether, is really what you're eating. That's the message there. With this, it's like just be aware that when you have something out there, you can market it whichever way, just like the stone soup. Let's take a look at how a Snickers bar can be marketed to seem like something very different than it is without altering the ingredients, just changing the packaging. There's a guy named Matt Roseman, which I know you know, and follow some of his stuff. He has social media channels called Cheat Day Design, which you definitely want to go and follow. He does all kinds of rebranding of packaging to show what can be done from a marketing perspective to make you think something is healthy without,
And this
without
is
really changing any of
phenomenal.
the ingredients.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable. And I think we can cap this off by basically maybe showing some of what he does because it makes the point that marketing can change your perception. Just like putting the word enriched somewhere, you can change what you think about something. Let me pull that up. Right, here's Matt Roseman.
Health food branding is incredibly powerful, and to show you how powerful it is, I'm going to take a Snickers bar, a universally loved candy, and rebrand the label 5 different ways to appeal to 5 completely different audiences. Check this out. First up, Snickers for the fitness folks. This is Snickers Pro Plus. Not protein, just pro to imply protein. If we use a king-size Snickers bar, it has 8 grams of protein, so we can highlight that. And the plus can simply mean plus energy from peanuts. Or we can make Snickers apply to the crunchy crowd with Snickers Naturals. Snickers uses sugar, of course, but we can argue that sugar comes from nature, and of course, so do peanuts. So I will highlight the naturally sourced peanuts. What if we want to make Snickers look like a low-calorie diet food? Snickers Slim. Just cut the bar in half inside so you can say thoughtfully portioned for guilt-free snacking. And then each one only has 125 calories. I also added 2 times the protein on here because companies love to do that all the time. You just have to compare to a comparable product. In this case, it has 2 times the protein of Twix. And let's try something different. Let's make Snickers appeal to parents shopping for their kids. Just make the label colorful and fun, and add things that are important to parents, like made with 100% real milk and contains essential nutrients and protein for play. And lastly, how about we turn Snickers into an energy bar? Snickers Jolt. It's just a Snickers, but the sugar gives you energy, and it technically does contain B vitamins and electrolytes because sodium is indeed an electrolyte. Just by rebranding the label, we can make Snickers appeal to 5 completely different audiences. It's that easy.
Yeah, so
So the important thing here is that it's not a different Snickers. It's the same Snickers chocolate bar that you've always eaten. It's just by using branding and not with lying, right? Just by emphasizing different things and different comparisons, you make it seem like it's healthy and you sell it in the health aisle in the supermarket, but it's the same Snickers that you've always had. The chocolate bar
Exactly.
beneath doesn't change.
Exactly. So perception is important, just like the stone soup perception,
Mm-hmm.
just like when you, in the past, and for a lot of people, if they see something that says enriched, they go, oh, this is healthy because it's enriched. You really need to look at it the other way and saying, well, why did it need to be enriched? And okay, you can have it because it's enriched. But again, we're saying this for the 100th time. Seek out foods that don't require enrichment and which are primarily animal-based products and not processed. Even if it's a plant product, get it in if it doesn't look like it came from a farm or from a ranch, probably shouldn't be eating it. If it came in a box with a barcode, you know, eat it sparingly or avoid it because those foods are typically devoid of nutrients, have all kinds of things added that you shouldn't be eating, and much of the food isn't really food.
So I want to have a follow up on this. And the follow up is to understand the manufacturing process. Hopefully, we can find a kind of documentary video of how some of these things are being produced. I actually want to see the factories and see the process of how some of the natural, vitamins and minerals that would be in wheat or in rice or in other foods are removed, probably through bleaching and through other processes. So, kind of what the manufacturing stages are that it takes to remove all of these things. And then I'd love to see if we can see video of how they, I mean, re-added it. They're probably just them pouring some, bags full of vitamins back into the manufacturing stuff. But just to kind of see that with our own eyes would be very cool.
Everything in our food chain is pretty much about making the most with the least, making it shelf stable, okay, and at the lowest cost. Lowest cost. That's why I think that if people are informed, as they're becoming more and more informed, and they start looking for
Yep.
more nutrient dense foods, a lot of
True.
this will just change because then there's an incentive to provide products that the marketplace will want to buy. If people
Yep.
start not, going away from things and they stay on the shelf and never get sold, they're going to stop doing that. And they're going to have focus groups trying to figure out why people are not buying this. Well, because they saw the YoJoe show and they learned that enriched foods really are somewhat devoid of nutrients, and they'd rather seek out things that have more nutrients in them. They'd rather have rice the way it used to be made and how it's made in many, many different countries in the world, even throughout Europe, which is more nutrient dense and doesn't have all this stuff removed from them and isn't ultra processed. So everything is heavily processed in the United States, and that's what needs to go away.
So the last thing I wanted to add is that sometimes, especially here in the United States, we end up doing bad in the name of good. So because we are so worried about salmonella and how dangerous it is, and it's true, salmonella can be problematic in occasion, right? Not regularly. It doesn't kill, millions around the world every single day, but it is something to be at least a little bit weary about. Maybe you want to wash your eggs before you, but because we have this overrated fear of salmonella, then we bleach our eggs or we wash them and we wash off all the natural, coverings that the animal kind of secretes along with the eggs that protect it, right? And then we have to refrigerate it in order to compensate, right? So in the name of good, in the name of, avoiding salmonella, we end up creating more problems that need more solutions that cost more money and it's just more of a hassle. So I think, our focus should sometimes be, simpler is better. We don't always need to do bad in the name of good. And it's very confusing for people because all they hear is that it's done in the name of good. So they think that there's a reason for it, when in reality, it's bad in the name of good. Just like enriched wheat, right? It's better to just have regular flour than to have the flour bleached and then needed to have these extra, minerals re-added. So I think the US and hopefully RFK will put much more focus on not having this whole mushkabobble of doing, having to fix things and then claim you're doing good, but really it's because you did bad in the name of good because you want to avoid salmonella, which is a good thing, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a mishka bobble is a good word. It might be a new word for many, but yes, a very good word to describe it. And even at the grocery stores throughout the country, if you look at where the lettuce and the produce is kept, there's usually nozzles underneath that are spraying what people think is water, and usually what it is a chemical mix that has chlorine or who knows what in there to sanitize the vegetables. So they're pouring chemicals, misting the vegetables to kill off any bacteria, viruses,
When
or
we're all
whatever that are
breathing
on there.
in when
They're
we're walking by.
spraying that on the food in the
Yeah.
grocery stores throughout the day through a timed pump or what have you that's doing it. And people just think, oh, look at that, it's misting some water. It's not just water. So again, we've created this food environment that's very chemical based, has a lot of,
Fake.
lacking nutrients and so forth. And the message is, again, think of what you're eating. If it looks like it came from a farm or ranch directly, that's probably where to start. If it comes out of a box, with a barcode, it probably is the least, your last food choice that you should be looking at, and eat those things sparingly. And I think with that we've come full circle as far as addressing sort of this enriched food, and really why, there's not that there's no value to it, but there's a broader question as to why the food is needing to be enriched. And I think with that, hopefully people are empowered to make their choices by asking some more questions about what they're eating.
You are what you eat. Make informed choices. For more discussions like this, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.